Right, so Newcastle United. Now, I've not done a single video on Newcastle since starting these YouTube videos. So I think it's about time I've done a Newcastle preview. So for the season. Now, we all know 2 years ago they had that wonderful season where they got into the Champions League, and it was probably their first time in 20 years, wasn't it, to get into the Champions League. So it was a remarkable achievement for them. And last season they couldn't quite maintain it, but it's very difficult. It's very difficult for a team like Newcastle, who haven't been in the Champions League for 20 years, to automatically maintain that and finish in the Champions League again. And they had to juggle around the games. They finished in the, I think, bottom of the group stages. But it took a toll, because I think Newcastle had a bit of a dip in the autumn period where they really struggled, and it looked like they were around 11th or 12th. But then in the last 3 months of the season, Newcastle picked it up big time. They really did. They showed some really promising signs for me. And I look at them, I look at the way they played. I'm going to put Newcastle 5th this season. It's a very ambitious prediction, because I think a lot of people are going to put Newcastle lower. I think that autumn period has made people put off Newcastle a little bit, and I don't think they think they're going to do much because of that period. But towards the 3 months of the last season, the last 3 months, I think Newcastle were playing really well, and I think they've got some. If you look at their team, we're going to go through their team in a second, but they've got a really, really good team, and I think it's, for me to put them 5th, that means I'm putting them above United, Spurs, Villa, and that's some doing, because to finish above those teams who are strengthening well Spurs still need to buy some senior players. But I mean, Newcastle, I think, are going to surprise quite a few people next season. I really like the signing of Lloyd Kelly. I like the links with Mark Gahey. Them two could provide a lot of competition for Botman and Schär. And I think that could be what Newcastle are missing. I still think, if you said to me, what do Newcastle need? I would say they still need another fullback, because I still think Trippier is currently still going through a bit of a shaky stage, and he might even leave Newcastle. He wasn't the same player last season, so I still think they need another fullback to possibly put less pressure on him. And maybe we've still got Lewis Hall, actually, to be fair, but I don't think Lewis Hall, he picks it up towards the second part of last season, but he still might not be the answer that Eddie Howe wants. But if you look at their team, I still think they've got quite a promising team. They've got Nick Pope in goal, who is a very, very decent goalkeeper. Fullbacks, they've got Livramento, who's, for me, I think Livramento is going to have one hell of a career. What a player he is. And then they've now got Lloyd Kelly and possibly Mark Gahey, and then Sven Botman and Fabian Schär. Lascelles probably will have it, they're probably going to look to sell him at some point. But yeah, the left-back position, they've got Lewis Hall and Trippier. I know Dan Burn's still there, but I still think they need something else at left-back. I think that's probably their weakest area. I think if they can definitely address that, who knows? They could finish above 5th. But that's their defence. And then you look at their midfield. Joe Linton, Bruno Guimaraes, and Tonali, because Tonali's going to be back now. That is a hell of a midfield three. That is a very, very good midfield three. And you've still got Lewis Miley, who could come in. You've got Joe Willock. I think Longstaff has to kind of move on as well. I think he's one of those. He's probably the weak link in the midfield. But those three I mentioned, that is a very good midfield. And up front, you've got Isak, Gordon, and Harvey Barnes. That is a very, very good front three. I've probably forgot someone. Callum Wilson off the bench. Almiron is still there. I honestly feel Newcastle could surprise a few people, because Anthony Gordon last season was unbelievable. Isak is one of the best forwards in the league. And Harvey Barnes, listen, look out for Harvey Barnes next season. I think he's going to be a real dark horse. He was already picking it up a little bit when he came back from injury. But that's, for Newcastle, that is a very, very good midfield three, and it's a good front three. And I think you're going to watch Newcastle next season, and they're going to score a lot of goals. And if they can buy Mark Gahey, that will make them more solid in defence. If I was a Newcastle fan, I know they haven't bought many people this summer, but I think Newcastle could have a really good season next year. I'm really excited to see how they get on, because they've got some good players. And that's all I would do, really. I'd probably bring in another defender who could play fullback. And if I was being even more pushy, maybe even a forward to go on the right hand side. That would be more or less it, really. I think Newcastle have a very exciting team. Eddie Howe has been linked with England, but he said he wants to stay, and he's got a project at Newcastle. They can't spend as much as we all thought at first when the owners came in, but all the players I've mentioned, that is a very, very good team, and I think they're going to really pose a few problems for a lot of teams this year. So I think watch out for Newcastle, because they're going to really surprise a few people. I think that team I mentioned is pretty good. Let's just see if they can bring in an extra defender and maybe even a forward, who knows. But Tonali, who was banned for the whole of last season, he is going to really, really surprise some people, because he's a good player, Tonali. I think we've almost forgotten what he's like. But yeah, any Newcastle fans watching, listen, I think you're going to have a good season. I think 5th place, maybe even higher, honestly, because listen, it all depends if they keep Isak and Bruno. But if they can, then for Newcastle, I'll tell you what, anything's possible.